Okay, I want to welcome everybody to the June Lunch and Learn for the Financial Stability Network that we're putting on. Today, we're going to be talking about credit reports and improving your credit score. This is something that's, I'm sure, all near and dear to our hearts. That, how do we get that best credit score we can, and keep it in balance so we're not going totally crazy trying to, get the perfect score. And you just need a good score. So we'll be talking about that. I'm very pleased to, let you know I've got Donna Hurley, CEO and president of Hope, and she helps people with this all the time. So we've got a resident expert to help us and answer the questions as we go through it. So Donna, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Good afternoon, everyone, because it is afternoon now. As Scott said, my name is Donna Hurley, and I'm the CEO and founder of Housing Options and Planning Enterprises, and we'd like to just simply say HOPE. Our focus, we are a HUD-approved housing counseling agency and in business since 2005, and part of our focus is homebuyers education, financial coaching, which is a big difference. It's not just credit counseling, but it's financial coaching, which is to help people identify their goals, very personalized, and help them to obtain that, as their coach, walking them through their own personal goals and helping them to, realize the benefits of setting really very strategic, and I'm sure you all have heard of, specific goals. And the other thing we do is home retention, helping individuals who may be struggling with their mortgage to stay within their home. So those are just kind of like three of the main focus that we have under our housing counseling role.
Okay, great. So today we'll be taking questions at the end of the presentation. So please send your questions to Emmanuel, who's our third party, our conference director. He's the one who'll be chatting with you using Zoom. So use chat to send in your questions, and then he'll feed them to me, and we'll get them asked, and Donna will help us all become a lot smarter today. So I'm looking forward to that. So we also have some polling questions we'll ask to kind of get a little bit of feedback from you on kind of what your process is currently. So with that, we're going to go to our first polling question. So when is the last time you've reviewed your credit reports? Within the last 6 months, 6 to 12 months, 1 to 2 years, more than 3 years ago, or never. So if you could go ahead and fill out that question and submit your answer, we'll kind of help Donna and I kind of get an understanding of where we are. And we'll be talking about particularly this question in depth here, about how often you should do it. And it's not always when you think, but we'll be discussing that one more and more in depth. So go ahead and answer that. Donna, I know that we've talked about this some, and I know in the presentation we talk about, generally at least yearly, but there are times when you want to check more often than that. You want to talk a little about that, or what your experience is?
Yes, so as Scott said, the minimum you want to check it is once a year. There's some, strategies around checking it once a quarter, but whenever you're having a lot of activity, you're open new accounts, or you have excessive credit amounts, buying new items, then you want to frequently check it. And especially if there's any issues as far as denial, that you are denied credit based on your credit, that you were denied, then that's a good opportunity to want to look at your credit score as well. Look at your credit report. So anytime there's a lot of activity, you should definitely make an effort to look, but on a minimum of once a year. We kind of recommend once a quarter.
Okay. Then there's some different strategies we get into this we'll talk about. Emmanuel, do we have the results? Okay.
Great.
good dispersion there. So for those of you who don't check it, at least once a year, hopefully this will give you a little more insight why it's important, and we'll move on and get into the presentation from here. Okay. So we're going to talk about credit reports here. We're going to talk at a high level, not going to get down into all the nitty gritty of the credit report, but if you're interested in that, let us know. We actually do have a more detailed presentation on credit reports. So what is listed in your credit report? It's your identifying information. What's your address? What's your your name, address, that type of thing. What are some of your debts and bills that you have? Mortgage, a car payment, such like that. Public record information. This would be, if you had any bankruptcies in your past or any liens against things, that would come out in this section. And then your applications for new credit and other inquiries. How many applications have you had? How many inquiries have you had? And that helps the companies who are looking to loan you money or give you a credit card or whatever. So that's what they use it for, but that will tell you if you're doing a lot of inquiries, that will have an impact. So not you doing inquiries, but a lot of, if you apply for 6 credit cards at once, that will have an impact on that. So the nationwide credit reporting agencies, the main 3 are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. So they're all kind of out there. A lot of times people, when you apply, they look at your credit report, you'll definitely want to look at all 3 to make sure, and you're really looking to make sure the factual data is in there, not some wrong information. Your credit score, this is a number based on the information in your credit report. We'll talk a little bit more about this. And basically what it's trying to do is predict your payment on bills and debts as agreed. So what's the likelihood you'll be making your payments all the time, on time, without exception? So how likely is that to happen? For the higher credit scores, like to present lower risk to the creditors. So they're more apt to give you lower rates or more benefits if you're lower risk to them. Okay. So who uses the credit reports and credit scores? Financial institutions, some landlords will get them, utility companies, some cell phone companies, insurance companies in some states, your employers in some states, some state agencies or affiliate organizations. So why are they trying to, why is your utility company, your cell phone company, why? Because they're looking at to make sure they want people who pay their debts or their bills. If you have a lot of people not paying your amount that is due, then they have bad debts. What that means to you and me, if they have a lot of bad debts, they raise their rates. So you and I have to pay more. So that's what they're trying to do, is minimize that so they don't have to pass on other people not paying their bills to us. Okay. Risk-based pricing. It's kind of what I was talking about. Credit reports and scores may be used as one factor in risk-based pricing. So if you're a person who's got a very low credit score, which is because you might have bankruptcy in your past, or you're not paying your bills on time, every month, they may say, okay, I'll give you a loan, but maybe a higher interest rate. They set interest rates and other terms based on what they look at your estimated risk, which is being driven by your credit score. They must tell you if they've used your credit reports or your credit scores to deny your application or offer you less favorable terms. That's an adverse action notice and a risk-based pricing notice. So if they've used those to adjust what they're going to give you, they have a requirement to notify you of that. If you have no credit reports or scores, they kind of call you credit invisible. You may have a harder time getting a credit or a loan, renting an apartment, getting a favorable cell phone plan, obtaining some jobs, or turning on utilities without paying a larger deposit, because they don't know if you're a person who pays 100% or you pay, 10%. So they're trying to adjust how they do this based on their perceived risk. And all this is about, minimizing the risk for them so that you get better rates. Okay. So remember the key takeaways: that your credit history can affect your access to credit, loans, jobs, housing, insurance, and other important services. And understanding your rights helps you know how to protect your credit history. So we're going to move into that a little bit. So your credit scores. We have another polling question here. How often do you monitor your credit score? So Emmanuel, if you could put up that question. And I know in one of the first classes when we talked about budgeting, there are several ways to get your credit score. Some credit card companies will actually put it in your monthly statement. We talked about using mint.com. If you use that, it actually updates your credit score whenever you go in and look at your mint, which you use for your budgeting and managing your money. So there's many ways that you can get your credit score that's out there. So Donna, I mean, how often do I need to check it? Is this another one of those annual things, or is this something I need to monitor more often?
So the credit score is a number that is utilized when you're applying for credit. But I think the key is just the data, you paying on time, knowing what's on a report. I would not pay to obtain a credit score, but as you stated, there's a lot of resources, your different credit card companies like Capital One, different ones will provide your credit score, their perception. Another thing that I think you want to take into account is that sometimes some of the places that do offer free credit reports is not the actual number that their number can be a lot lower, like Credit Karma. Their number is usually lower than when a mortgage company pulls the report. They look at what they call the tri-merge, and so the data or the number on some credit scores, some FICO or some scores on different sites is lower than what a tri-merge or what a lender or a creditor would look at. So that's why I say I don't get so hung up on the credit score. I look more at, the history as far as paying on time, how it's being paid. I think that's more of a key. The credit score is important for certain function, but the reality is more the data. So I would say, you want it minimal, again, annually, but quarterly, we definitely lean a lot towards, knowing the information or looking at the information on a quarterly base.
Okay. And Emmanuel. Okay. We got the majority are doing it at least monthly, some daily. So if you're not monitoring, it's probably something you'll want to at least become familiar with and be looking at. Because if bad data gets put out there, you want to be able to dispute it as soon as you can to get it corrected and taken off your thing. I mean, one of the things, if you're not planning to buy a house, buy a car, get a new credit card, credit score becomes not such a big issue. But particularly, like for me, I'm retired, I'm not doing a lot of those things anymore. So it's not as critical versus a younger person. It would be more critical because you will be moving into all of those types of things. So you want to keep track of your credit score. Okay. So let's move on to the basics of credit scoring. The numbers calculated from information in your credit reports. Generally, the higher the number, the better your credit history. It's, again, predicting the likelihood of payment of your bills on time and as agreed to. Two significant factors affect your credit score: whether you repay debts on time and as agreed, and your credit utilization rate, which we'll talk about a little bit in a couple slides here. Okay. The more basics of credit scoring are multiple producers of credit scores. We talked about the three. already. There are others out there. You likely have multiple credit scores and different models for different types of credit. As Donna mentioned earlier, the one that Credit Karma may have versus a lender may use, and they're just kind of looking at the data a little differently. And so the 5 factors in your FICO, the model for them. Your payment history, that's 35% of your score is based on have you been paying your bills on time. Amount owed. So what this is saying is so if I've got credit cards that will allow me to borrow $20,000 and I've used $18,000 of it, that's 90%. So I don't have a lot of leeway. So that would lead to a lower credit score versus if I only had $1,000 or 5%, then I've got leeway in the amount that's owed. So that's what they're looking at there. Length of your credit history. So how long have you had credit? I know this happened to a few people I know where they had, oh, I have this old credit card. I never use it. And they've had it for 20 years. And so I'm just going to close it. And then they closed it and their credit score went down because their credit history now is maybe only 5 years instead of 20 years. So if you have older credit, think about it, whether you really want to do that because it may reduce your credit score. The credit mix, what type of credit, a house, a loan, is it credit cards? They look at that. And then how much new credit have you applied for? So Donna, anything you would like to add on this? Because I know this is kind of a thing that people really need to get.
I think you really addressed it. The payment history and the amount owed represent the largest portion of what the FICO score represent. And, the payment history, and that's just paying on time, how you're making the payment consistently. And another thing, not just paying a minimum, but also, how that payment is being made. And then the amount owed, Scott talked about utilization. And I think, people just need to really understand how to calculate that. One thing we would say constantly is that you want to keep your balance 30 to 50% below the credit limit. But another way of looking at that is really understanding that credit utilization is that if you take the total amount of your credit card balances, take all of it and then divide it by the total credit limit, then you'll see how the banks are looking at it. I'm saying banks, but creditors, how they're looking at that amount owed or that percentage, how they're coming up with the factor on to represent your FICO score or based on the amount owed. So that amount owed or that credit utilization is another key item that you need to look at and be conscious of when you on your credit that affects your credit score.
Okay, great. All right. You can order your credit scores. If you're more than annually, if you are turned down for credit, you have a right to see the exact score they used. Make sure your credit scores are accurately reflect the information in your credit reports. So that you need to get and review your credit reports annually and look at it. Make sure there's no bad information in there that could be affecting your score one way or another, but you want it to be accurate. And Donna will talk a little bit more about this in a little bit. So what is a good credit score? This is the FICO scoring system, 300 to 850. If you have a very good credit score, I wouldn't get worried about trying to get to an exceptional credit score. I mean, you may drive yourself a little crazy. Understand the factors and maybe things, if you've only had a credit card for 3 years, you're not going to get an exceptional because your credit history is not that long, as we talked about. So, what you want to do is make sure you try to push it up into at least good or higher. Donna, you have thoughts on this, on what people should aspire to?
So when you're looking at obtaining a mortgage, the minimum mortgage or score in order to get a loan is 640, 680. I think it's just been really pushed up to 680 of late. So I would say that you want to be in that good, at least at 680 if you're looking at becoming a homeowner. That's a critical number to work towards.
Okay, good information for all of us. Okay, remember the key takeaway here is take steps to improve and manage your credit score. This includes paying your bills on time and as agreed. That's the one thing that's the easiest thing if we can really strive to do that. So, all right. The next one, getting and understanding your credit reports and your scores. We're going to cover this briefly. You have a right to free credit reports, one free credit report for every 12 months from each of the nationwide credit reports, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. You can go to them individually. You can go to annualcreditreport.com and you can order them there and get it all done at once. So you're looking at them all at one time during the year. Donna, you want to talk a bit about one of the other approaches to monitoring your credit on this?
So you've heard me say constantly to look at it quarterly. So one way of doing that is instead of getting the report from annualcreditreport.com for all three other bureaus at one time, is to order from just one. And then, 4 months out, then order it from the next one, and then the next 4 months. And then that way you'll be able to consistently look at every quarter, to see, what's on your report. So that's one way of doing it. I think it's, it has a benefit. Now, the other thing, from the annualcreditreport.com, it does not give you your credit score unless you pay for it. So I just want to kind of point that out. You do not get your credit score from annualcreditreport.com.
Okay. Yeah, the big thing, whether you do it is done every 4 months and get one, or do it once a year.
Just do it.
Yeah. Doing nothing is probably the wrong answer. So you definitely want to be monitoring and make sure they have accurate data, information.
Right.
Okay. Watch out for imposters. Others will advertise free credit reports, scores, monitoring, and are not part of the legally mandated free annual credit program. Often their free services convert to ones you have to pay for after a trial period. So just be careful. Either order them individually, as Don said, or go to the annualcreditreport.com. There are a lot of people out there trying to, oh, I can do this, or I can promise you things. And Donna will be talking about some of those a little bit too. And nothing is necessarily for free. But be careful what people are out there, because they're trying to take advantage of people. So you have a right to additional free credit reports if you have received public assistance, unemployed and looking for a job, a victim of identity theft or financial fraud. State law provides for a free credit report, or if you've been denied credit, service, or an apartment or employment. So if you've been any of those and you've already checked your credit, let's say 4 months ago, and all of them, you do have a right to go back and ask for it again. So. Okay, so the big thing is to make sure you're reviewing it at least once every 12 months, reviewing your information. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Donna to talk about how do you dispute errors on your credit reports.
Okay, so when you're looking at your credit report, you want to identify those errors. And earlier on, Scott showed a slide that talked about the different areas on your credit report. And you want to pay close attention to every area. Don't just ignore your the personal data, your name, your addresses. Make sure it really relates to you. Inaccurate reporting of account status. You want to look at, if you have a line of credit that it's really your line of credit, that is your data, that the information, the balances are correct, that everything related to that account is accurate. that that it's not showing anything as far as being late. If it says 3 months late, or if it has certain notation. And I think it's important to look at the summary, the explanation on a credit report, because a lot of people don't know how to read a credit report and just kind of breeze through it and not really understanding what the data is, what it means. So I think all credit reports will have a summary or will have an explanation of what the data means. So you need to look at that and make sure it's that you understand what's in the report. You know, the fields are going to show, you know, numbers, you know, like if it's an installment, or if it's a credit, or whatever type of payment, or whatever type of what's reported on your report, you want to just understand that, you know, that the information is accurate. So you want to look at the entire report all the way through, line by line, and checking, you know, for the notations as to whether or not the information is correct. Okay.
Yeah.
This kind of explains the timeline for information being reported, negative information being reported on your credit report. So negative is going to stay for 7 years, bankruptcy 10 years, judgments up to 7 years, or statutes of limitations, and that could change. Student loans can stay for 7 years after the grantor's action. So depending on, you know, when it was filed or what's going on, that information will stay. Inquiries. Now, a lot of people, you don't think about when you go to a store and you apply for a credit card, that every time someone looks at your credit, other than you looking at it or a nonprofit that pulls a soft pull, every time someone looks at your credit, that is an inquiry, and that does have an impact on your credit. So you want to just, you know, be conscious of, you know, inquiries in any type of, and understanding that, you know, they just don't go away. The next slide is going to talk about this negative information and the 7-year rule. So 7-year rule. One of the things that I think is interesting is that people may say, it's been 7 years, and it's still showing up, or it came up as a collection agent, a different collection agency. So I think the key that we have to understand is that the last time you made a payment on that account is 180 days or 6 months is when it then goes into default. From that period is 7 years from there. However, if it is during that time period that is transferred or sold to a collection agency or to a different collection agency, the time could start again. But one of the things that I would recommend to you is that if that do occur, then you can dispute it, because it should have fallen within that 7-year period. Okay? But as that last bullet does state, that it can be sold and resold and resold. So it doesn't necessarily automatically end at 7 years, but you just want to really monitor it and know, and just watch for the date when it actually, the last time you made a payment on it. It should be 180 days or that 6-month period, and then 7 years after that. And if it goes anytime beyond that, because they transferred it and resold it, then it's an opportunity for you to dispute that action. Scott.
Yeah.
So there's some exception to the time limit on negative information. And this here was actually new to me. Scott pointed this out to me. So I had to go back and kind of look it up. But it's basically saying that there's no time limit for negative information for someone who has a criminal conviction, or they have a job with a yearly salary of over $75,000 or more, and they have more than $150,000 worth of credit, or life insurance. So that the exception of the 7-year rule it does not apply in these cases. So that was great information, Scott. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Medical debt and credit report. So with medical debt, the credit industry is a lot more lenient because in many cases, a lot of us assume that our insurance company is taking care of it. So this is another reason why it's important to monitor your credit report consistently. You know, why maybe once a year is not sufficient because you see that you really have 180 days. So that's a 6-month period. So again, it's important to be regularly, consistently monitoring your report so that if some medical things show up, that you have the opportunity to dispute it and get it resolved so it can be taken off of your credit report. Another important point is that medical debt can easily be expunged, that it'll actually be removed as soon as it's identified that the insurance company has paid or will be paying that.
Okay.
So disputing your credit report, there's really 2 ways of doing that. So if you're doing it online, you're going to either of the credit reporting agency. On their website, it's very easy to select the item that you want to dispute. It's really the easiest way, although many people prefer the paper trail. And it has this advantage of doing it by paper, is that you're able to attach the supporting documents. Okay, so that is the second option, is to send a letter, a certified letter with all of the supporting documents, really disputing the concerns, the items that are inaccurate. And when you submit that information, you want to send a detailed letter. I think it's the next slide will explain.
Okay, I've got a question. So I've got something that shows up in all 3 of my credit reports. It's the same issue, one issue, but it's wrong on all of them. Do I dispute it in all 3 of them, or if I get one to fix it, will they all fix it?
No. So if you're disputing any item, you have to dispute it by to each agency. Now, if you're doing it online, it's very easily to dispute all 3 of them at the same time. But if you're doing it by mail, then you have to send a letter to each of the credit bureaus. The other thing that you will notice, or that you on a credit report, in some cases, only one of the credit reporting agency will not be reporting the item. So that's why it's important to look at the credit report, because Equifax might report something and Experian does not have that on your report. So if you're sending it by mail, then you don't send the same letter to all 3 of them. You only disputing what's basically reported per that agency. Did that make sense, Scott?
Yep, that's good.
So when you're disputing it in writing, you're going to submit your complete name, address, a clear description of the items that you're disputing, and a request for correction or removal. So you're basically telling them why is incorrect and that you're expecting it to be removed. And there's plenty of sample letters out there, plenty of literature that will help you to write that dispute letter. Go to the next slide. So when you're sending that supporting information, never ever send your originals. You always only send copies, copies of your receipts, any type of information. You're going to reference the account number, the credit card number, copies of your check images, screenshots, whatever you can. And also you want to enclose a copy of the report with the items in question. So if you have, for clarification, if you have a copy of your credit report and you want to attach and circle, identify the line item that you're addressing, that you want them to remove or that you're questioning.
Okay.
After you file your dispute, the credit agency must investigate the items within 30 days. So you want to track that. Within a 30-day period, you are supposed to receive some information back that they have, notified that creditor, and that creditor must respond to them within that 30-day period. They will then provide you a written report and a free copy of the report of the disputed item that resulted in a change. So once it's been clarified, it's been resolved, then they will follow up with a copy, updated copy of the credit report. You can request, and this is important, if you've been denied for a job or for an apartment or rental or any situation, you can request that they provide an updated report for any entity that's denied you in the past 6 months. I think that's another critical thing that, to keep in mind. Okay. And again, remember that you're requesting this from all 3 credit bureaus, so each one should be responding back to you. The key takeaway from this is to file a dispute right away. When you identify an error in your credit report, take the time and request and dispute the information, and then keep records so you can keep track of that 30-day period and that you've received your response. Next, we're going to talk about build, repair, and maintain your credit. It's important that you get a copy, you get and review your credit report, you dispute and correct any errors, you pay all your bills on time as agreed. That's how you keep your credit updated and keep and establish good credit. Get credit for making utility and cell phone payments on time. This is alternate credit that we'll talk about. Pay off debt and keep balances low on credit cards and other revolving credit. We've already talked about credit utilization by paying off debt and keeping your credit cards balances low. Very important. And then last, use as little of your credit limits as possible, which also address the credit utilization.
Well,
so the next slide, we're talking about using credit building strategies. And so some of those credit building strategy, I just mentioned a little bit about, certain things are not normally reported on your credit report, such as utilities, your rent. Right now, FICO has a way of what they're calling credit boost, where you can request for certain things to be added on your credit report. A lot of times, if you don't do it, if you don't ask for good stuff to be added, good credit rating, things that are not normally on your report, they only will report the negative information. So that utility bill that you're paying, your cell phone bill, you can, utilize some credit building strategies to add those other positive things on your credit report that will also help to improve your credit score. Keep old account open. You heard Scott talk about that, if you delete some of those old accounts, then if you close those old accounts, then that credit history goes away. So that's important to keep. Apply for credit only if you need it. Don't have, 10, 20 credit cards, identify, the cards that are important to have. Those store credit cards, the interest rates are outrageous on it. So, and it gives you the false feeling of having more money or more resources and put you heavier in debt. So only obtain credit for major or for things that when you really need to have the credit. And negotiate different terms. When you have a good paying history, then you can negotiate a lower interest rate, or you can negotiate when your payments are being made. So don't be afraid to reach out to your credit card company, and ask for better terms. Ask for goodwill deletion. So if you have negative information on your report, and you've been paying. So let's say by accident you missed a payment. For some unforgotten reason, you were 30 days late on a payment, and it's on your credit report. Don't be afraid to reach out and again ask the credit card company or ask the company that, you know, I missed a payment, but I've been a faithful client, customer. So can you remove that, you know, negative comment or negative late payment? And many of them will. You know, or another thing that if you realize you're going to be late for whatever reason, it's a good time to reach out in advance to request a forgiveness or to request. There's many ways that the creditors will work with you, and especially during this time with the corona virus. There are definitely special exceptions that are being made with your credit. So again, just reach out and ask in advance for them to be lenient, and all credit card companies are doing so. I know the last month webinar clearly talked about the what's going on with the CARES Act and around the CARES Act for credit. So I won't spend any time on that, but just be aware that there are definitely an opportunity now that you can ask for a special exception if you have to be late and not able to make a payment on your credit. And the last thing is to dispute any inaccuracies on your credit report. That's important, that you have to look at every item on your credit report, and if it doesn't belong there, you want to have it removed.
Now, one other thing I would add, you know, if you get paid twice a month and you have all your bills due on the first of the month, you can talk to some of these creditors and ask them, hey, can I change my, you know, due date so it's a mid-month, so you're not, you know, overwhelmed at one and at mid-month you don't have any bills. So they'll work with you. A lot of these, you know, even the utility companies, they'll adjust your due dates to work with you. So don't be afraid, as Donna said, to reach out and talk to them about how to, you know, make it a little easier for yourself so it's not as stressful.
Absolutely. So this is a list of some alternative credit history that does not show up on your credit report unless you're late, unless they're filing a judgment or a lien or a collection against you. So these are opportunities for you to, again, look at boosting your credit score, because you're paying your rent, you're paying a cell phone bill, utility bills, you know, you have internet. So these are definitely ways of boosting your credit. And even if you don't want to do the FICO boost, if you certain opportunities, like if you are applying for a mortgage or attempting to get a mortgage, they definitely look at your rental history. And there's, you know, other things that can, you know, loans from family members, different things that definitely can be applied towards your mortgage payment. I'm sorry, towards alternative credit.
We're starting to get close on time, so I want to push through so I have time for a couple questions here too.
Okay, building credit, very easily getting secure credit cards or secure loans, becoming an authorized user on someone else's account, getting a cosigner. So these are just some different ways that you can build your credit.
Okay.
Maintaining your credit, pay your bills on time as agreed, pay down your debt. Look, always remember that credit utilization. Don't apply for too much credit. Check on your credit reports and dispute regularly, and keep good financial records. You know your numbers. This is a question, Scott, that I wish you had asked in the poll. Do you all have a written budget? Because I think you have to know your numbers. You have to know what's coming in and what's going out. Thank you, Scott.
Okay.
get help. If you're challenged in any way, don't hesitate to talk to the financial institute, the credit card holder, or whoever. Ask for help. HUD-approved housing counseling agencies are always a great resource. Financial planners to really plan for your, financial well-being, retirement. Talk to a certified financial planner.
Okay.
So many companies, when they promise to fix your credit for a fee, there's some companies that offer that. Debt consolidation, there's ways that you can consolidate if you feel overwhelmed with your debt, but be careful when you're looking at these debt consolidations, and make sure that it's a legitimate company, and they're not just going to take the payment and hold it, because that can affect your credit in the long run. Danger signs of quick credit fixes. Someone asking you to pay for a credit repair service, asking you to pay for it before they've done anything, advising you to dispute all negative information. If the information is accurate, then it's going to be on your credit report, and it just takes time to address it. So don't dispute every item just because it's negative. If it's correct, then you just have to work on it. It's just going to take time. Another sign of that you should be concerned about, if they're over-promising. We promise or we guarantee we're going to remove everything on your credit. And another one that was a real big scam is getting people new identity, new social security numbers.
And wow.
Debt consolidation takes out new loans to pay off other debts, which I think, again, was talked about last month. If you do that, don't overload yourself with new burden. Debt settlement is always a way of, asking the company to accept a lower payment and to settle the debt. So it's always a good way, if you're able to do that, to resolve the debt as quickly as possible.
Okay.
And it's a note here that you might end up having to pay taxes for that portion that was settled. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, basically what IRS is saying is, because you didn't have to pay them, then it's income to you. So then you have to pay taxes on it, which seems a little odd, but that's what that's referring to.
Yeah. Credit scams, promise to erase and remove all negative, promise fast and easy credit repair. Again, sometimes it just takes time to reestablish, and it can be done. Offer to create a new identity, want you to pay up front, will not tell you about your rights. And you do have rights, but again, I just want to keep stressing the fact that negative information can be addressed, and you can reestablish yourself. Protect your credit history. Be aware of fraud, and you can definitely put fraud alerts on your credit report. You can, as the last bullet says, you can lock your credit. You can do credit freeze. And then when you're active military duty, there's different types of alerts that can be placed on your credit report to protect you and limit asset from other people getting onto your account and using your credit.
Yeah, I know when I had a someone changed my address, and, then I had all this other stuff, and I put a lock on my credit because I didn't want anyone getting in there. So if you got a fraud happening, or you're in the midst of trying to resolve it, having a credit lock is probably a good idea. Would you agree with that, Donna?
It's a good idea. I know individuals who have a lock, and anytime, even if they, trying to pull a credit report or doing anything, they have to remove the lock. And right now, if your bank card gets misplaced, you can do, like on the phone, you can put a lock on your card. So there's a lot of different, ways of locking your credit report and locking things down so that you are protected from fraud.
Okay.
Credit history does not have to be your credit future. Your history is not your future. You know, you have to look forward in it and be conscious, and everything can be addressed.
Okay. With that, we did get a couple questions in, Donna. So the first one is, does the government have assistance for individuals regarding improving credit scores? I don't
I'm
know.
sorry.
Does the government have assistance for individuals regarding improving their credit score? I don't know that. I think non-for-profit, there are some non-for-profits out there that will help you, but I'm not sure that the government per se, the federal or state government, have individuals that can help you on your credit score.
I don't know that the government takes direct action in that. I will say that the government does provide, the federal and the state government provide funds to nonprofit like housing counseling agencies to provide financial literacy, financial coaching to help individuals to work on their credit, to build the financial well-being. So I wouldn't say that they will directly be involved, but that you can go to the HUD.gov, HUD.gov, and identify a HUD-approved housing counseling agency that you want to work with. And most of them provide, you know, one-on-one counseling to help you to achieve your financial goal.
Okay. And we at the FSN, the Financial Stability Network, if you do have questions, we do have people who can help work you through. And a lot of it's down on kind of allude to having a budget, you know, kind of working through the issues so that you can consistently pay on time. That's gets you a long ways towards that stuff. But we have those resources also. The next question is, where do lenders get their official score for an applicant? Is it the big three credit companies?
Again, that's why I mentioned the tri-merge. So there's different credit collecting agency or different credit, but they will pull a report like we use Credco. Many of them do that, but it's a organization or it's a credit retrieving company that pulls the information and where they will combine it or list all three reports from all three agencies in one, and that's what's called the tri-merge.
Okay. Okay. What is a good credit utilization percentage for credit card usage?
I would like to say 30%.
Okay.
You want to keep it definitely under 50%.
Okay.
What do you say, Scott?
You know, I work to pay it off every month, so it will go based on, you know, if I'm making a major purchase, it may go above that, but immediately then drops down below that. But yeah, under 30%. I mean, the credit cards, the interest rate you have to pay for them is extremely high, particularly in these times when, you know, you're putting money in the bank and you're getting less 1% just for your savings. You know, you definitely want to get it below 30 and, you know, trying to pay them off. That's really should be your goal every month. Try to pay off your credit cards. I know it's not always possible, but, you know, 30% is a good target to keep it below and keep pushing it down even lower. So pay them off every month. So this next question is a little more involved. What are your suggestions to a person who may be feeling overwhelmed after reviewing all three of their credit reports? When they're trying to repair it, where do they start? Is it best to pay off small debts or work on the large debts, or any thoughts on that?
So there's a couple of different approaches to that. And again, don't feel overwhelmed. There's resources that can help. As I said, HUD-approved housing counseling agencies. But I would say it's based on your individual goal. It's easy, I think, on one hand, I mean, there's different approaches. One, Do you look at the ones that have the highest interest rate? Or two, do you look at the lower ones that you can pay off quickly and then start applying that that payment to another one? So there's different approaches. I think that instead of being overwhelmed, that you may want to sit down with someone and help you figure out your own personal objective.
Okay. And we have one more question here. I just want to be clear. It says, if I was late on a credit card payment and was charged a late fee, but I paid it before 30 days, it wouldn't affect my score, and will they report it? I guess because most of them have 25 days, so if you were late. I'll get your thoughts and I'll provide my own on that.
So no, if it's not 30 days, then it should not hit your credit report, okay? And then if you get a late fee, and if you have a good history, ask them to remove the late fee. You know, they really will work with you on that.
Yeah, I've had that experience where I've missed it by a couple days and it just got lost in the mail or whatever, or I didn't get the bill or whatever, and I've asked them, they waived it. And I mean, and a lot of these credit, if they're going to be really, you know, obstinate on you, it says that there's a lot of credit card companies out there. So do this company really want your business? That's kind of the way I kind of look at it a little bit. So this next question is, and I think we've talked about this a little bit before, not today, but is it true that multiple mortgage loan inquiries done within a 10 to 15 day window count only as one hard inquiry to your credit? I believe it's within a 30-day window, not 10 to 15. I believe it only counts as one inquiry because they do know you're shopping for loans.
That's correct. On any major purchase, a mortgage or a car note, on those major purchases, you have a 30-day window and it is only counted as one inquiry.
Okay. Good. I appreciate, Donna, you joining us today. It was very enlightening and very helpful having you here because I know a lot of this, but there's things that you taught me, and I'm sure our audience really appreciated all the insights and strategies to how they can deal with this and improve their credit. So if you have additional questions, you can send it to our email address, and we'll be happy to answer them. And if you're in this position and you're not sure what to do, contact us, and we'll help you get in the right direction. So thank you all for joining. And next month, I think we'll be talking about, start talking about housing. Should you rent or buy? And then a little later, probably the next month, we're going to start talking about, if I'm going to buy a house, what's all entailed in that. So until next month, I hope to see you all again. Thank you again, Donna.
And thank you, Scott, for inviting me.
Okay.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye. You can hang on, Donna.